So I'm Peter. I'm a priest in the Church of England, and we started foster caring. You'd been thinking about foster caring for quite some time. Mm-hmm. Then we got involved with a supported lodging scheme, and did that for a little while, hosted refugees for a little while, and then we were thinking actually if we'd like to maybe host an unaccompanied minor, or maybe put a little bit more structure to some of the supported lodgings, just actually fostering just seemed like the right next step. So looked into it, and as we looked into it, did some investigation, and thought, yeah, okay, this would be a good idea. Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I'm Kristin, and we've been actually fostering for about 7 months now. Yeah. So after going through the process and whatnot, but yeah, we've done other things in the past. So yeah, I've always wanted to do something, either fostering or adopting, and it's kind of an evolution of seeing the need and where the need is, and kind of going, how can we help with that? Like Peter said, we did the supported lodgings first to see how that would work out with a teenager. So she was 16 when she came to stay with us, and that was really a great fit for our family. And so it was kind of just looking at next steps and going, actually we've done this, so I think now we can look at doing something with a younger child as well as older children. We were open age range wise, but so for me, a lot of it was just kind of slow steps and saying, yeah, that's something we can do and actually be helpful with.
Yeah, I think similar as slow steps. I mean, if I'm being really honest, if you would have asked me like 5 years ago if I would foster, I would have said no, because I don't want to ruin my life, kind of thing. And actually look into it and think about things. I mean, from a faith perspective, actually looking after people who are vulnerable and who need hospitality and need a place to stay. But also from a personal perspective of just saying, actually, it's good to put yourself out there, and it's good to have an open mind and to learn about it and to find out that maybe it's not everything you thought it was, in a good way, particularly if fostering is something that's quite scary. So to go through the process of just figuring it out has been really good.
I think the biggest one is being able to see the progress of our foster child in our home. I was actually saying to my social worker the other day, it was a Saturday afternoon, and he was resting in his room, and my girls were resting, and everyone was reading, and it felt like a normal afternoon. There was nothing weird or like, I need to go do XYZ for somebody right now. I'm not thinking about like our foster child being our foster child. I'm just thinking, this is us relaxing on a Saturday afternoon. And that was really, it just felt really normal there, and that was really cool. I think the other thing is for our kids to have life experience with someone who's different than them, that they probably wouldn't come across in the general public, and they just accept as this is just another typical person. That's really good, and I hope that that's something that they carry on with them in their lives, and if they see someone who has special or different needs than them in the future when they're adults, that they're actually helpful to that person instead of just staring at them or thinking there's something wrong with them. So those are the two kind of big highlights for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think the kind of comment I made earlier about like I'm not sure about fostering because I wouldn't want to ruin my life kind of a thing. And actually there is a sense where in whatever life I lived previously, however I lived it, that has changed, and it's not ruinous. And actually is a blessing for us and for our whole family. Some of the things Kristin has just mentioned, and I think for our kids, for our family, for us, I think finding in ourselves new capacities that we didn't know or believe existed or would exist, and seeing those bubble to the surface and kind of seeing that for ourselves, seeing that for our kids, and I think also for the community that we live in as well, whether that be as we walk through town, hang out at the park, go to church, or whatever else. I think it's been a blessing for us and for our community that our fostering has been for them, particularly because of the additional need that our particular foster child requires. It's been good. one of the most challenging things for us, because of the additional needs of our particular foster child, I think sort of everyone ramping up to what the new normal is going to look like. At some level, almost every foster child is going to have some level of additional need because they've had to end up in foster care. And so there's that sort of settling in period that everyone just needs to get to know each other a little bit. So I think that was difficult at different times and in different ways. I think negotiating some of the systems and things like that, there are a lot of interested parties, rightly, in the care of the child, and so sort of navigating the communication between all of the different organizations and care providers and everything else like that. It takes a little while to get up to speed on all that, but it's not. I don't think we've found it insurmountable.
No, I think the key is if you can look at one thing at a time, you actually figure out I can do that. If I look at a month, that's really overwhelming. There's too much to do. There's too many needs that need to be met that I might fail. Somebody just kind of horrifies me at times. But actually, if you just go, today looks like this, I've got what I need. I need to go to the shop and get this to make sure this person's happy at this time. It's all just very normal and mundane stuff that you do, and it makes it easy to do if you look at it one thing at a time. But I think something that was difficult for us was being confident in communicating with our foster child, because he's nonverbal, and making sure that his needs are being met in the best way we could do that. And not only for us, but for our children to be able to talk to him confidently. And we're all in a good place now, but it's because we did things one step at a time. When we first got the communication book home, it was completely overwhelming, and like, how am I going to do this? But then it's like, oh, you know what? I only need to look at this page today to make sure that you're happy while you're eating. And then, the next day, okay, I'll use this page. So it's all small steps.
And I think with the challenges that there are also, we've experienced great support, in terms of people to talk to and saying, okay, what's going on over in this area, and how do we navigate that? And, okay, the child is demonstrating this kind of behavior. What's going on here? Whether that's school, whether that's Diagrama, whether that's whatever, social worker. We've found tremendous support by and large.
Yes, very valuable. So I would say when we first received profile on our foster child, it was overwhelming. We just said we'd think about it for a little bit, and then kind of took a step back and went, how do we think this is going to look? And then asked some questions. Our social worker from Diagrama was excellent at being a sounding board and asking me the right questions, because I can be a little bit idealistic as far as, we can do all these things. And she's like, but actually, how will this work in your everyday life? And forced us to kind of look at situations in a realistic manner. And she was really good at supporting us to, again, take small steps to be able to visit our foster child before he came to live with us, because it's a totally different circumstance than normal. And we were just able to see that in a lot of ways he's just like every other child. There's going to be communication failure with somebody who's nonverbal, but there's going to be communication failure with my 9-year-old who's having a really hard day, so we just needed to figure out different ways to support him and systems to put in place that are organized, that help keep those emotions down so that you can meet the needs, if that makes any sense. But again, I think everything just goes back to one thing at a time. If you look at it all at the same time, it's too much. If you look at it one thing at a time, it's very achievable.
I think for me, I'd probably say that his profile was a lot more intimidating to me, because I don't really have a load of experience with children or adults with additional needs. So when I read things like global developmental delay and autism and nonverbal and nappies, and my mind kind of goes to, whoa, this is going to be the real deal. This is going to be full on. And indeed, in some ways, it is full on, but it's not what my imagination was able to create. Reading a profile was much different than the person who sat across from me when we had a chance to meet him and actually see in flesh and this child. And I think that for me at least was really good, because it's just like we love reading books because our imagination can take the words on a page and create a whole other world to live in. And the same way you can get a profile of a child, and your imagination will create a whole world that may or may not have any basis in reality. And so to meet the child and to be able to interact and to be able to, it's going to sound really hokey, but to humanize what's otherwise a piece of paper. And then, as you're saying, to recognize actually you're just dealing with another person who, communication will be different, and it might be difficult, but it's not impossible. The care might be different, and it might at times be particularly difficult, but it's not impossible, particularly, as you're saying, just taking it sort of one step at a time, one topic at a time, and not rushing ahead. I think just real quickly, I'd say just our supervision and our social work with Diagrama has been fantastic. If for no other reason than I have absolute confidence that they're looking out for the well-being of our kids as well. It's not just are we getting the job done as foster carers, but it's looking at our whole family and making sure that our blind spots are being looked after, and not in a I'm going to catch you out sort of way, but in a we want to care for everyone in this situation kind of way. I have full confidence that if I've got a blind spot and one of my kids is sort of like there's a little something going on, then it'll get noticed in a positive way, and interventions will come into place. That's probably the thing that stands out most to me.
Yeah. Well, and in all honesty, that's why we chose to go with Diagrama as a fostering agency rather than some other places we looked at, is because we knew they would support us as a family. And the bottom line is, whenever you're bringing another child into a family, it's a family unit. They become part of that. And so if everyone's not looked after, it's not going to go well. And our social worker does an amazing job of asking the right questions at the right times, and kind of just being a listening ear and a sounding board that's really, really valuable. I don't feel like I have to make something look nice before I say it. It's just, let's talk and be vulnerable and be honest. And then we can have real communication, come up with real solutions, rather than, me feeling like I'm reporting to someone who's making notes on me, which she is, No, it's good, but that there's something that's really valuable in that actually creates a bond between all of us, and makes it so that we can help one another.
And the trainings, especially given the additional needs of our foster child, the trainings that have been available and that we've received have really been particularly helpful.
I think we just always are really open. When we're processing through something, the kids become part of that. So it's not so much that we've made a decision and then we're coming to them for feedback. It's more, actually, this is what we're thinking about right now. How do you feel about that as we go forward? And they were all quite open to it. Probably excited in the wrong ways. I think they all thought we would get a baby, which I don't know why they all thought that, but they did, and that's exciting for any child. I think that they were nervous as far as us saying yes to somebody and then that person comes and they don't like them, what would they do then? And our social worker was amazing with answering those types of questions. So she comes in and she's like, you know, how do you actually feel about this? And they're all very comfortable with her because they have a relationship already. I believe they all know that if something really went kind of backwards, they could talk to her and us, and we could all work it out, and it wouldn't mean that this is permanent forever. So I think because they know that they are part of this picture, they're not just a piece that's sitting over here, they're part of our, you know, whole picture, they're very comfortable, if that makes any sense. So.
And I think it's difficult because the love and security that is meant to be experienced at home has this sort of weird inverse fruit where, like, we're our worst selves at home, you know, because we're so busy being good out in public that you kind of come home, and at home is where you kind of shout at each other and you kind of have a short temper and you are a bit greedy and you're a bit just ill-mannered because you're at home and you know you're loved and you know it's going to be okay and you're going to be forgiven and you're going to carry on with life, and so then when you bring someone in, not for like a weekend or for a week, but you're saying this new person is going to live here, it kind of does something to challenge that safe space, and you're like, oh man, now I've got to be like on my best like all the time, and that can be really insecure. It's like, well, where do I go to rest now? You know, which is kind of where do I go to be in my horrible self, because that's more restful. But it's true. I mean, you know, that's just how home is, and I think that's part of the settling in process, and I think that's been part of the conversation that we had. Is just, you know, we'll work through it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You know, but let's try to anticipate whether or not it could as much beforehand, and let's anticipate that together, and let's agree we're going to give it a go, and if at some point in time we need to pull the plug, then no one has to feel guilty about that, no one has to feel bad about that, you know.
And kids are really resilient.
Yeah.
You know, our 15-year-old has been a huge blessing in this process, and I never would have guessed that. He is the closest to our foster child out of all of our kids. And it's an amazing relationship to watch, the affection between those two that has happened, that actually I don't think would have happened for our oldest child with anyone else. So it's been a good, you know, opportunity for him, and I think actually looking at him, he would be an amazing foster carer or carer of some nature when he's older, and he wouldn't have ever known that if we weren't caring for a foster child. So
I would say really take your time looking at the different agencies and sort of mechanisms of fostering, and find one that suits you and your family very well. That's one of the things I think that's made fostering so successful for us, particularly with me being quite reluctant, really, to be honest, is finding Diagrama and saying, actually, this is a fostering agency where we have confidence this is going to be as successful as possible. And so I think do your homework and find an agency that works out well. Secondly is I think you can't help everyone necessarily, and you don't need to feel like you can. Get a profile, think about it, talk to other people, talk to people who know you and who care about you, and who you'll, you know, other just friendship relationships, because you'll receive support from friends and your kind of broader community, and not feeling the need to rush into it, but to think about it really intentionally. And then thirdly is, you said it, you know, just take it a step at a time.
Yeah.
Kind of, you get a profile and you think about like the big picture, and you think years down the line, you know what, who knows the future anyway, just step at a time, a little bit at a time. Those would be the three things I would say.
And don't be afraid to use your support network, you know, and that looks different now to us 7 months down the road than it did at the beginning. So, you know, when I think of a support network, I think of how are they going to come help our foster child, but actually our support network really helps our kids.
Yeah.
So if there's a stressful situation going on, it's like, oh, let me come take so-and-so out to lunch, and they bring them back, and they're in a better place, you know, to kind of interact as family members. When people offer to bring you food, say yes. When somebody says, let's, you know, go to the park, let's go do stuff, go do it. You know, don't be held back by the fear of, nobody else I know is fostering. I don't know what it looks like to take my foster child to this place. Just go do it. See what it's like. You know, it's good for everybody to have new and different experiences. We've gone into London and gone on the tube, and that's not something I ever would have thought we would have done. When I read the profile of our foster child, it would have seemed impossible. But actually, we've had a really good time because you just go and you try. And sometimes when you try, it's really successful and awesome. And sometimes you fail and you go, I'm going to tweak this and do it different next time. And you try again. But in the end, that's just living life.
And there are people, I think, who, in their own hearts and minds, they might think, oh, I might like to foster. That seems like a really cool idea or something really good to do, but I couldn't do that. And they might want to support us as fostering and say, well, I'm not quite ready to foster myself, but how can I support you guys fostering? And that does two things. One is it puts does a few things. It puts the foster child in a community of care, you know, which is good. It normalizes fostering within a community, which is good. So it also normalizes the foster child in a community, which is really, really good. And it also allows people who used to think that fostering was impossible for them. It helps them to ease their way into thinking, oh, actually, this is probably something I could do too, because I've gone to the park with a family who fosters, because I've gone out to eat at a restaurant with a family who fosters, because I've made a relationship with this foster child who's not mine, you know, but through our friends or whatever. And actually,
it's all just normal.
we probably, we probably could do that, and that's a good thing.